What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Hobby Hotline, the Saturday edition. This is episode 288. Shout out to my microphone for being on this time because last time I hosted the show, my microphone was not off and I wasn't looking at the screen and everybody was waving at me to tell me my microphone was off. So shout out to my mic for being on this time. I've got two phenomenal guests here with me as well. We've got Horatio and we've got Adam from Splendid Cards. Horatio, how's your week going? What you got going on?
Great week, man. Great weekend. I'm gonna be running up and down with my kids, but it's Super Bowl weekend, so there's always that excitement. Exchanging texts with friends that I haven't spoken to in a couple months, just talking about the game. So it's funny how the Super Bowl will do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And Adam, how are you doing as well?
Great. Yeah. Excited for the Super Bowl tomorrow and excited to talk to you guys for the first time here. This is cool. So,
Yeah,
yep.
absolutely. This isn't your first show. It's not, right? Or it is
No,
your first show?
nope, not my first show, but first
Oh,
time talking with you guys.
wonderful. Perfect. Love to hear that. So we are going to start out this show. We're not going to be talking football. We're going to talk football a little bit later on in the show. We're going to be talking some basketball and a important card that was hit this past week. I don't know if you could say it's the talk of the town or whatever you want to say. I know a lot of people, when we first brought up the card on the show, people were saying this was just going to be a card for social media, that it was a card that no one would ever see. Apparently, the one of one LeBron James, Bronny James, has been pulled from an LCS out in Chicago. Pretty cool that, a person pulled the card and maybe not a breaker. I think I saw that sentiment a little bit on social media. I mean, technically, if a breaker is pulling the card, technically someone else is pulling it, someone else is getting the card. But Horatio, I'll start out with you. What are your kind of initial thoughts here? I don't know if you've talked about this card on the show before, but let us know what you think of this card and the pull and just stuff like that in general.
Yeah, I think it's a cool card. I think that the fact that it's, I think, the first LeBron auto that's been out in the wild, right? Like that's a new LeBron auto that's been out in like 10 years or something like that. So that's a big deal, and it's with his son Bronny. I think that's great. So reports are saying that it's like a six-figure card right now. If someone wanted to sell it, it's in such high demand, and I kind of would agree with that just because of the novelty of it. Interesting that it's got LeBron in his, I think, what is his high school uniform, Bronny with his USC uniform.
Mm.
Um, what does how does that impact the price down the line? That he's not in an NBA uniform. I don't know. But it's still a pretty cool card. It's a one of one. For any LeBron collector out there, like super collector, I feel like this is a must have, and that's really where the value is for someone that's like a high end LeBron collector. Like this is a pretty unique piece.
Yeah, absolutely. I think very similarly. And I mean, obviously, I don't know. I mean, it's a weird type of card because it's like LeBron is obviously LeBron, and Bronny is still in college, still kind of figuring out his way. I mean, coming back from that heart injury that he had over the summer, that obviously we're rooting for him to come back from that. That's obviously such a devastating injury, especially for a player with such promise. That's obviously going to affect him a little bit, and it's an interesting conversation of like what happens to this card in the future. I mean, Adam, I'll ask you a similar question. Like, what are your kind of overall thoughts on this card? Like, do you think it's cool? Like, do you not like it that much? Like, what do you think?
I do think it's a cool card. I mean, as far as the idea of the card, father and son on a card, both autographed, one of one. Like you said, Bronny having that real scary situation with his heart, and the fact that he seems to be back and okay now. And I just think, it must be cool for LeBron to be on a card with his son, right? And vice versa. But uh, from a negative perspective, I guess I haven't looked at many LeBron autos. That's a horrible autograph? Is that how he signs all the time?
Well, I'd be
What is
interested
that?
to know, like, has he even signed anything like recently? Like he hasn't been signed in any Panini products. I think that's maybe that's why there was only like one in like 100,000 in that like Space Jam set that came out like a couple years ago. He hasn't really been in any autographs. I mean, he probably signs big contracts, yeah, he probably signs contracts, but that's maybe
Right.
it. I mean, I don't know. I mean, yeah, that's a good point.
I know that's a newer thing. Everyone kind of signs Messi now, but I guess I'm a little old school with that.
Right, right. Yeah. Shout out to everybody in the chat here on this Saturday morning. Make sure that if you are watching, comment where you're watching from. This is always something that I try and get the chat involved in. So Mad City already got into the action of telling where he's watching from. We got Ventura, California. Like I said, this is a global show worldwide. Mr. Worldwide, Hobby Hotline. I don't know if they call us that, but I'll call us that today. Hopefully, let us know where you're watching the show from. Now, we're going to still talk about this topic. I'm interested. The 1-of-1 Brawny autographs, the Superfractor that came out of this Bowman product, is actually listed on eBay right now, or at least it was last time I checked, which was like a couple days ago. It was listed for $100,000. I would be interested to know, Horatio, I'll ask you this question. Like, this person that pulled that Brawny card, they listed it on eBay, which I feel like that's one of the bigger, hit cards really that we've seen go on to eBay in quite some time. From your perspective, like, do you think that was a conscious choice? Do you think that they consciously chose to sell it on eBay rather than going to like Golden or any of these big auction houses? Or do you think it was just like, hey, whatever, I'll just sell it on eBay?
Yeah, I mean, it must have been a conscious decision to sell out on eBay. I'm not sure, what the I know the auction houses have taken a bit of a hit recently, right? In regards of how they market some of their products, and how they kind of handle their, I guess, the premium that they're going to get as well. So, by going through eBay, I guess it's pretty direct, it's pretty straight. You're going to take that 13% hit. I mean, I don't know if it works differently with a card of that magnitude. Like, if you talk to the powers that be at eBay and you're able to kind of manage something where you get, less or more of your money from where you sell it. But it is interesting. I didn't, last I heard was that the person that pulled the card planned to hold it for a while. That was kind of the word. So I'm kind of surprised that it was on eBay. I had no idea that it was on eBay.
So yeah, I'm looking actually for the auction right now, and it doesn't look like it's there anymore. So maybe the person pulled it down potentially, because it definitely. I mean, I remember talking about it and doing an episode about it like probably like a week ago, and that's when the last time that I checked. So maybe I don't know, maybe they did pull it down for whatever reason. But so Adam, I'll ask you this question: do you think? Like I've been thinking this I've been thinking this myself recently. Do you think that there's like too many auction houses? Like, do you think it gets too confusing for some people when they're trying to sell their card where they want to sell it? Like, eBay always did seem pretty straightforward, but like now, like you can go to Golden, you can get it graded by PSA, and you can have it almost done all pretty seamlessly. Or do you think that the amount of auction houses don't really affect the market as much as maybe I think it does? I guess is maybe my question for you.
I do actually think, I don't know if I would say there's too many auction houses as much as there's not great ways to, at least for me, I find out I see cards that sold at auction houses that already sold, and I never even noticed that it was in an auction. And I sometimes go, man, I might have bid on that card. I didn't even know it was up for auction, because I know people do. I do save searches with eBay, so if there's a card on my want list that I really want, I'm going to get a notification and it's up for auction with eBay. But with some of these auction houses, I'm not checking them every auction. And maybe someone should come up with something that can do like a universal save search, where no matter where it's for sale, whether it's auction houses, you get that email. I don't think anyone's done something like that yet, but yeah, I think that is an issue from a selling standpoint. I guess if you're a buyer and you want to find some deals, it might work out for you. But if you're trying to sell at max value, yeah, you don't get as many eyeballs in many cases as if you were to sell on eBay.
And I did find the auction. I was just going to pull it up really quick so we can take a look at it. So yeah, let's see if I can, hold on. Let me make this a little bit larger here so we can see the whole listing. Yeah, so 1-of-1 Superfractor. I mean, again, it's like, wow. It's interesting that the person, and also, I mean, I know that this is something that people do occasionally, is they put stuff on eBay with no real intention of selling the card. Like, it's kind of just like hey, I have this card, look at it. Like, I think I saw like a couple years ago, I think it was like the Pete Alonso 1-of-1 Superfractor from like 2013 or 2016 Bowman. I forget which year it was. I know that that person, from what I had heard, that seller just basically lists a bunch of cards for like a ridiculous price because they know that they won't sell, just so that way they can kind of almost have like a portfolio of their cards on eBay, which I thought was interesting. So, I don't know. This card has been listed for a while. I'd be interested to know if they've gotten any offers for it. I don't really Horatio, I'll ask you this question. Like, do you think, and you don't have to give a specific, but do you think that this sells even close to the 100,000, or do you think it sells closer to like 10, or even like, I don't know. It's just an interesting price, I think. So like, where do you think this price ends up selling? Like, do you think it sells close, or do you think like the $100,000 price tag is like way off?
No, so I'm sorry, Adam. I thought when you were saying that it had been put up on eBay, I thought you meant that the Brawny had been put up on eBay.
Okay.
But now that I'm seeing that, so no, like the LeBron Brawny where people were saying, people are speculating that it is a six-figure card, that is a $100,000 card. This one, it's just Bronny on the card. He's in his USC uniform. I don't think it's a $100,000 card.
Mhm.
I don't know that it's even a $20,000 card. I mean,
Right,
I'm just
right.
taking a guess here, like, because right now Bronny's claim to fame is, being LeBron's son, and he is a bit of a celebrity in his own right. I mean, he's been in the public eye since, he had that reality TV show in high school. By all accounts, he's a nice kid. So he's got his own brand, right? Like he's his own man, but still, he's still kind of coming into his own at USC. I don't see anybody pulling $100,000 for a card of his. Maybe about 20% of that, 20K, 10K even. That's where I see it at.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, honestly, like this has always been my sentiment. Like whenever these cards get listed and people are talking about prices, it's like the market is going to determine what this card actually sells for. Like the one thing that I had an issue with that Babe Ruth card that sold through, it might have been at Robert Edward auctions like a couple
Yep.
months ago. Like every article there was Washington Post articles written about it. Which, granted, a lot of those types of news places you can just buy an article, like you can just tell them what you want to say and they just write it. So like it's a promotional thing. It's not really like it's not somebody who was interested in the thing that wanted to write about it. It was literally they just paid to have placement essentially in the article. Everybody was saying it was going to break the record, and then it didn't even come close. So it's like I think, we have come to the point in sports cards where it's like not everything is going to sell for what we think it's going to sell for. Now, granted, again, I've speculated that could have just been, well, if they can get 20% more and they can spend X amount of dollars on articles, then maybe it's worth it. Maybe it's more of a business transaction where it's
Right.
like checks or it's like balances of where they can buy something and maybe it'll sell for a little bit more. Maybe that's the case, but either way, I mean, I think, like I said, these are cards that are going to be very interesting. I was just very interested that it went on eBay. So Adam, I'll kick it over to you before we switch topics here. But like, what are your thoughts on this card or just this card in general? I guess.
Well, people in the chat are saying it's a $150 card, so I think the listing might be a little off. No, look, it's a cool card, 1 of 1. No one knows what Bronny James is going to be as far as a player. I think LeBron should buy this card. Click the buy it now button, LeBron, for your son. It's a 1 of 1, great gift for your kid for entering the NBA in the near future. So, I don't know. I mean, who knows with these type of cards. If it did go for 100,000, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised the way things go now. If it went for 10,000, it's just hard to know with these. It's a 1 of 1, so all it
Right.
takes is one person to really want it.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and I mean for LeBron, I'm sure he has like $100,000 like sitting somewhere in his couch in one of his couches in one of his mansions. So like that's
Yeah,
nothing for him. I mean,
right.
it's like for us, it's like $100 or $200. Like for yeah, I think that'd be a good idea. I think for LeBron to just go out and buy that card. So similar kind of topic. We're gonna still be talking about basketball. We have Prism basketball that recently came out, and people have started crunching the numbers on the I'm finding that people started crunching the numbers on the amount of parallels that are on the checklist, and I'll just give everybody a little bit of a taste of what that looks like. You got the lucky envelope prism. Wow, so fun. You got like all of these random parallels. Like 30% of this list are non-numbered parallels, and then you have 3 1 of 1s. You've got 3 5 of 5s. You got 3 8 of 8s, which is like everyone's clamming for those number to 8 ones. I guess I'm being a little facetious here. There are 63 parallels, which is a 21% increase from the previous year. So, Adam, I'll kick it to you first. I mean, what do you think? Like, what do you think when you see these numbers? Like, do you think it's good, bad? Like, where is your mind at when you see stuff like this?
It is well, I don't think it's good. I think it's bad whether you're a collector or an investor, whatever you want to call yourself. I think from an investment standpoint, it's diluted, right? It's 63 parallels. It's just diluting everything. But from a collector standpoint, you can't. It's an impossible feat, right? To collect all the different parallels of a given player. I mean, 63. How would you do that? And so I don't think it's going to be something that's going to create new collectors. It is interesting because I was just on Baseball Cardpedia the other day looking at 2000 Prism from Pacific, the original Prism, and it was like a crazy thing back then that I had 15 different parallels in that set. Now we're up to 63, 24
Right.
years later.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I remember, like I said, when I was kind of doing my discussion on this, on Hobby News Daily, the podcast that I do, um, it like it just seemed like it seemed like a couple years ago. It was like red. There was like red, blue, green, and that was like it. Like there was like 4 or 5 different parallels that were big, and now it's like, I guess I would be okay if there were this many parallels, maybe if the numbers were all different, but it's just like the fact that there's like I said, 3 one of ones, 3 numbered to 5s, 3 numbered to 8s, 3 numbered to 10s. It's like
Yeah.
it just seems like it's almost overkill at this point. Horatio, I'll ask you a similar question. Like what are your initial thoughts when you saw this list and kind of saw, in my opinion, the astronomical number of 63 parallels that are coming in what should be one of the most important sports card products, I think, in any given year.
Yeah, I mean, my thought is to kind of just ignore and move on. It's just too much. So and to be fair, like I'm not a big basketball collector to begin with. So it kind of, but I could see how the whole parallel, the whole thing can move on to other sports and other different brands as well. 63 is just a lot. When I first got into the hobby back in like not first got back into the hobby, like say back 2017, 2016. All the parallels back then were like confusing to me. I didn't understand, what all the parallels were about, why one was more than the other, how you could keep track of which one was more rare than the other. And so when I look at 63 parallels and I see some are out of 299, some are out of 75, some are out of 150. Well, you have 2 parallels that are out of 299. You have a bunch of them that are out of like 45, a bunch of them that are out of 100. What at that point it's like, what's the difference, right? So I don't know. I agree with Adam. Like he said, I don't know that it's good for the collector who tries to like kind of create, collect a player and complete their whole set. It's just so hard to do. Not even including the one of ones. Like say exclude the one of ones, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's so hard to do now with all of those. And then as an investor, I mean, this is just one release, right, from the year. Like, I mean, what's up down the block? Like if you keep repeating the pattern, I would say, be very careful, what you buy for an investment, number one. And if you're going to buy, just buy to enjoy it and really don't expect anything back because it really is. I mean, it's a cliche at this point, but they're saying like, there's the junk wax era 2.0, kind of like the same but different, right? And it's beginning to look that way. It's kind of beginning to look that way. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm very conflicted with this type of thing because it's like on one hand, I think Prism should be a product that is pretty prestigious within the hobby. But on the other hand, it's like, yeah, it should be prestigious, but you should also be able to get it. Like that's one of the other things. It's like product is only as important as, I'm trying to think of how I want to say this. A certain product is only as important as the people that can get the cards, I guess, if that makes sense. Like, if people can't get these cards, which is what was happening a couple of years ago, I get that. And it's unfortunate that like, obviously we saw what was happening in retail where people were just buying so much of the product. And that was really, I don't know. I think that probably hurt the consumer a little bit because, you had to pay 3, 4, maybe even 10x what the price of a blaster box was. I think like that hurts the hobby, but I'm also not super convinced that putting out 63 parallels really helps it at all either. I think I want, things to change sometimes within the hobby, but I want it to change in a way that helps the consumer, helps people who are trying to get these cards. And so we'll go around one more time. So Adam, with these cards, um is Prism a set that you think has it jumped the shark, I guess maybe is the question that I have. And I think for many years people have been saying this, and I think this may be one of the times where I almost do agree with it, depending on what they do next year. I don't know, maybe this is one of the last years, but do you think, unfortunately, this is one of the last years that Panini is going to be making basketball cards anyways. But like for you, do you think that Prism has, do you think it's overrated now? Like, I guess maybe that's the question that I have for you.
No, I don't think so. I think Prism is still, when people look back 20 years, 30 years from now, I think Prism cards are going to be the cards that people think the most about. I think they're the iconic brand of this era, whatever you want to call this era. But I don't know how this is going to help bring more collectors in. You always hear that these card companies, they want to grow the hobby and create more collectors. Think about just, I'm looking at, like you said, 3 numbered to 10s. Now think about someone who opens a pack and they pull a numbered out of 10 card. It's gold. And they're thinking, oh, I hit a gold prism out of 10. No, you hit a wave gold prism. Or no, you hit a gold shimmer first off the line prism. And then you have to explain to that person, like, no, the gold prism out of 10, that's the one you want. That's the one that's huge, right? But wait a minute, this one's numbered to 10. It's a wave gold prism. What's the difference? So I think it's just so confusing for anyone other than like an expert that it's going to be tough to catch on, I think, unless you're already into it.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I think with people who are creating content, that's one of the things that I always look for is like, are they creating content that's, helpful for people, or are they kind of just, creating content that maybe is confusing people a little bit more? And I think that's something, like you just said, like within that, the number to 10, there's literally 3 different, it's all gold too. Like that's the other thing. And it's like, so at what point, like, how does the market determine which one is more valuable? I would have to guess maybe it's just the regular gold prism, but at the same time, it's like, well, who knows? Maybe the wave gold prism, maybe that sells for a little bit more. Maybe people don't know the difference. That's kind of the thing that's the thing that is the most annoying to me here, is just that it just seems like it's convoluted and more confusing for no reason. Horatio, before we switch up, I'll kick it to you one last time. Like, do you think that Panini is just doing this because they know that they're going to be, they're not going to be making basketball cards, so they're like, we're just going to print as much of this as we can, and hopefully down the road these cards continue to sell and the product continues to sell, and there just will never be like another, there won't be like a lull where you can't buy this product potentially.
Yeah, I mean, maybe all of them, right? Like someone's having a lot of fun with their, at Panini with their Photoshop program, coming up with all of these. But a common vintage card collector, kind of funny, but he said, breakers deserve an Oscar for their acting skills when getting excited about the hits. Like maybe the breakers had some influence here, right? Like, hey, you got a hit, you got a numbered card, and so like, why not make more of them, right? Maybe this set was breaker influenced. So that, there is some excitement when you pull that numbered card. The third thing that comes to my mind is maybe Panini is trolling the hobby. I don't know. Like they are going out with a bang is a comment that they made, like, oh yeah, you thought we had a lot of parallels, watch this. And then they just,
yeah.
And then they just keep topping it. And it's like, awesome. Okay. Go out in a flame of glory. But it'll be interesting to see what Fanatics does, down the line, if they kind of take that torch. Maybe this works for Panini, by the way. Maybe this is like a bestseller. Maybe the demand, like you mentioned, Adam, who knows, right? But who knows? Like truly, who knows? Maybe the hobby thinks it's great. And then, this is just the beginning. Maybe why not 100 parallels?
Right. Yeah. Right. Why not? I mean, they gotta, like I said, unfortunately they do have to figure out like what to do. Like if they're going to continue to make cards, they sort of have to figure out what they're going to do with like, what's their strategy, because I think now at this point, they have to have some sort of strategy. Like that's sort of where I feel like over the past few years, card companies haven't had any strategy. They're just like, here are all the releases. We're going to come out with them, on the dates of when we're coming out. And then sometimes it's not even on the date. Sometimes they're like, we actually have to push this product back. And then they put out like I think Prism Football and Donruss Football came out within 2 weeks of each other. Like two of, in my opinion, the biggest releases of the year. They were just like, hey, we're just going to put all of them together because we can't, like, we have so much product, we have to put it out. We're not going to not put out Prism. We're not going to not put out Donruss. Like, we're just going to put it all out. Which, I don't know. Well, I guess we'll see sort of what happens down the road. I think Panini has a couple years with football and basketball left. They just lost UFC. I don't know if they talked about that on the last show. UFC is already back with Topps, which I think is actually sort of crazy. Like they announced the partnership and then they're like, oh yeah, we're also coming out with a product in February, which I think is very interesting because it was only like a month ago that Panini took WWE off of their licensed products that they have, like in that little, like that logo section. So I don't know if somebody didn't know or someone didn't update it or whatever, but either way, I mean, I think it's going to be, it's going to be interesting to watch. We're going to transition to,
I just say one thing. I want to just add one thing here. There's a lot of talk about breaking in the chat, which I have strong thoughts on that. Like I always think back my generation or other generations, when you ask someone like, hey, how did you get into the hobby? It's always like, hey, I started opening packs. I went to the store, I bought a pack or whatever. it seems like now, I'm not anti-breaking. Understand it's a big part of the hobby, but how many are actually like opening packs now of cards, right? Like opening a pack of Prism and having that memory of, hey, I remember when I was a kid, I pulled that Prism Gold out of a pack, right? Like now it's, hey, I entered a break. I got a card. They sent it right to my vault or wherever to PWCC, and then and I sold it on eBay. Like they never actually touched the cards. I feel like there's a tangibility that's lacking now, and these card companies, I think they could improve that by somehow trying to get more tangible packs or whatever into the hands of kids or whoever. But I feel strongly that it's changed so much in that I don't know how that's going to carry over into the future.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's a good point. I think that's actually probably something that I'll talk about when we get to the taking a break in the hobby section. Like, I think the point is basically just that I think the industry has changed so much that it's like, but I feel like we also try and hold on to the way that we originally started opening cards in a way. Like, that's something that I've definitely seen in terms of like, not to sound like ageist or anything, but like some of the older people within the hobby, I think they really hold on to a lot of like the opening packs, and they like the sort of things like pricing a lot of the times too. Pricing being a lot higher and stuff along those lines. But it's like, I just think the way that's what's happened within sports cards right now, the industry has changed so much in a way that it's like it's almost unrecognizable compared to what it was in maybe the early 2000s or the early 90s or the 80s. Like, it's just so much different. And one with actually maybe a good transition here from the 80s and 90s. So PSA is actually announcing that they're going to be doing something a little bit different with their labels. Horatio was explaining this to me earlier before we got on the show, so I'm going to let Horatio kind of take the lead here a little bit and explain it, just because I know that when he explained it to me and it made a lot of sense. So I'm going to let him explain. So Horatio, go for it.
Yeah, I'm gonna try not to mess up the story too much, but essentially, PSA created a brand new label, a blue label, which I think is awesome, and it was in response to a social media campaign, almost saying like, "Hey, PSA, you shouldn't be encapsulating fake cards with authentic signatures without denoting it, right? Without really truly like pointing out the difference." So whenever there's a fake card, they PSA labels it. You see it on the screen there as a trading card, right? So let's say it's a 1990 Topps card. They won't put that because PSA knows it's a fake card, but with an authentic signature, an autograph that they're willing to authenticate. But before that, it was in a red label, so it wasn't very clear. The red label was for everything, right? So you really had to be careful as a consumer with what you were buying, right? Now, a collector knows, that if you see trading card on there, then you're dealing with like a fake card, not a reprint, by the way. Like reprints are legit cards, right? They're going to be labeled that way. But fake cards. So the problem came that you could see that there were people, buying these fake cards with autographs at an exorbitant price. So like the example was like a Frank Thomas rookie card. So, you could get a Frank Thomas autographed rookie card for around $70, $80. But because it was in the PSA slab, right? It was fetching a premium, and they were selling this fake card with the Frank Thomas autograph was selling for like $200, $250. And maybe it was somebody that had less knowledge. Maybe it was somebody buying a gift for somebody, but they got called out, right? And to their credit, like PSA, like 3-4 days later, created a brand new blue label, so that they can kind of make a difference between real card, fake card. And I think that was pretty impressive by the company to kind of do that based off of like a social media campaign.
Yeah, definitely. And so, Adam, what are your kind of thoughts on this? What do you like? What do you think about some of the some of the changes? I guess this is maybe a change. Maybe a couple people are putting in the chat that maybe it's not necessarily a new change. They've done this in the past. But what do you think that they're promoting it now? I guess that's one way to put it.
Yeah, I have seen, I'm not a huge auto card collector, but I have seen cards from, way back or from the past that have that blue, maybe it's a different color blue or whatever, but it's a blue old label that's just for like autograph authentication. So yeah, I guess it's good that PSA's maybe trying to simplify things, or I don't know if it's simplification, but they're trying to color code things so that maybe newer people can look at a slab and know what it is easier, instead of trying to decipher the label of, wait a minute, is that a Gem Mint auto? Is that a Gem Mint card? Is that what is this card? So It's hopefully it will be an improvement. I don't have strong opinions on it because I don't really collect a ton of this stuff. But if it can make the experience easier for newer people that are trying to figure out things, then that's good.
Right. I mean, I think, actually, I saw someone, I think Matt City Brew had a kind of an interesting concept here where just put fake on the label, or shouldn't PSA send it back not graded? I think,
right.
I don't know. I mean, I think, yeah, I guess putting fake on it would be, I don't know. I guess I'm kind of torn on that, because I do think it's, it's something where it's like, yeah, maybe you should be able to label it a little bit better. Like, sure, because like you put trading card or whatever you put on here, that kind of signifies that it is either a fake or an altered card. But like that doesn't really, like, somebody that maybe doesn't have the knowledge, maybe they don't know, what that means. And I do think that another thing within sports cards that is important for us to advocate for is just making things simpler. I think one thing that has helped the health of the hobby definitely has been tools like Card Ladder or the Sports Card Investor platform, like tools that have made it easier for you to find prices, and you don't have to, it's not so convoluted and confusing about what you're looking for if you're trying to buy a card. Now, if you're buying a fake card, unfortunately, there is going to be times, or an altered card, there is going to be times where it's like you just don't really know. And it's like, unfortunately, you may run into scenarios where there is a fake or an altered card that you're not really sure if it's being sold at a show. And the thing is, like, when a card changes hands so many times, it's like who was the original person who altered it or faked it or whatever. It's like, it's impossible really to figure that out. And I mean, online, I think that's one thing that I think would be interesting. And that's one thing that, when I was getting back into sports cards, the platforms like ComC, for example, were ones that I thought were pretty interesting and pretty innovative in terms of, like, making things not simpler, but less steps for buying and selling cards. Like, sure, there's going to be fees on those types of sites, but at the same time, it's like, the digital trading of physical products, I think, is much more prevalent than it ever has been. I think even just because, I mean, you just look at it, eBay, for example, was only really came into the fold like in the 90s. Like, it's still such a new platform and technology that we're still like learning how to, successfully run those like companies and use those companies as resources. So another tool that I think is very interesting that Horatio actually shared with us as we were looking up topics here, so there's a website called Tiffany Cards. I'm going to share that tab here. And the thing that I thought was most interesting, and I know that they talked about this on the last podcast last week with, I believe it was Dr. Beckett and Danny. I forget who the other host was, but I think that they talked about that. The SGC unfortunately graded a LeBron exquisite autograph that had been altered. And it turned out that very quickly people were like, hey, this has been altered. And then they quickly reverted, which, I mean, shout out to the collector for sending that card back in and getting it fixed, because that's the one thing that I think that probably took a lot of guts, if I'm going to be honest. Like, if I would be nervous to do something like that, because it's like, then what do you do? Like, what's the next steps? How do you get your money back? But the thing that Horatio was bringing up here is that if they had just come to this website, you would see that if you go to Exquisite, there's actually, let me see if I can make this a little bit larger here so you can see the whole platform. Yeah. So there's, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 14 of the 99 LeBron exquisites have been altered. And that's pretty wild. And, Horatio, I'll kick it off to you. Like, what are your thoughts on, like, so Tiffany was one that you brought up. So, like, what are your kind of thoughts on this website, and, how maybe card companies can use it to be a little bit better of a resource when it comes to grading? Oh, you're muted.
I was muted.
There we go.
The Tiffany Cards is thank you, is an interesting resource. Adam, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the comments about the trading card. So, like, I appreciate the feedback. Like, I feel like it's something that I need to kind of learn a little bit more about. But even that's not clear to me, right? Like, trading card does not mean it's not a legitimate card. It just means that the person wanted to authenticate the autograph.
Right.
So, but now they're bringing back the blue label. So I'm going to look a little bit more into that. To me, it's a fascinating story that PSA is doing, and I'm kind of wondering. this kind of ties into grading as well. The Tiffany cards, they came on my radar because, like you said, this is an old story, but they called out an exquisite card that was graded by SGC, and they have a database of about 8,000 altered cards and stolen cards as well. And it's just fascinating to me how they get their information. I think they get a lot of it from blowout cards. A lot of them there, they have great detectives, people that are doing like the day-to-day work of, looking at which cards are obviously fakes, and they can track them. And it's amazing how they do that work. It really is that we got hobby members that are taking the time to track cards like that. And so they just came on my radar, like Tiffany cards, when they called out that SGC grading, and SGC did the right thing. They said, we made a mistake. And someone made a comment. All they had to do was go on this database, and they would have known that the card that they graded, the exquisite that was numbered 63 out of 99, it was on their database, and it had been known to be altered since like 2018, 2019, around there. And so I think that this is something that, a site that is a must go to, like if you're a buyer, you want to go check to see if there's any of the cards that you're interested in buying have been listed there, if they've been altered, if they've been stolen.
Right.
And I know that, as if you're a grading company, I think there's another place that you must go to now, right? Now that they've been kind of called out a little bit for it. And it's astonishing to me, like how many of these exquisites, for example, have been altered. And it's not just modern cards. It's, like there's a bunch of vintage cards on the site as well that have been listed on there. So I don't know. It's a cool site. It's a little bit, I don't want to say clunky, but it's not the easiest to navigate. So
right.
It's just done by people that have a passion for it, and it's a great resource.
Yeah, right. I totally agree. Adam, same question for you. Like, how do you think that card companies or companies can use this website a little bit differently? Or like, do you think, how do you think that card companies can use this website? Or like, what are your kind of initial thoughts as well?
Well, my initial thought is, look, I like SGC. But honestly, how does Tiffany Cards have a database of this, and SGC, the professional grading company, doesn't have a database? I mean,
right.
Like I don't collect LeBron James. I'm not a huge modern basketball collector or anything, but I even knew about this card, that there's so many of them that the patches are removed. And I know that's last week's story, but I mean, it is baffling to me how that happened. With SGC. And I found out about Tiffany cards off of Twitter back maybe a couple years ago, maybe. And I always thought that was cool that they put this together, and it's a great Twitter account, I guess X account now. But look, another thing that jumps out to me, look at the difference between LeBron's signature on this card versus that one we looked at earlier. Boy, that's changed over the years, huh? Like that's a little different than the one that's on that 101 we looked at earlier.
Right. Totally.
But yeah, it's a great site, great social media follow too, if you haven't followed them.
Yeah, definitely. And so I will unshare that one, and then we'll kind of move on to. I know Horatio's got to get out of here in probably like 5 to 7 minutes or so. So we'll move on to this one other topic that we got, and then me and Adam. It's weird to say that we have the same name, but either way, but we'll be. It's like the multiverse or something like that. But we'll get into one other topic after that. But so this kind of gets into an interesting conversation. And I'll ask the chat this too. Actually, I think this is going to be a very interesting topic for the chat too. Have you ever taken a break from the hobby? And Horatio, I'll start with you just so you can make sure you get your piece in before myself and Adam will go into maybe our stories. But Horatio, I'll start with you. Have you ever taken a break from the hobby?
Yeah, so I'm sort of in the midst of a mini break, and what I mean by that is, so this year I've decided to pull back. My wife and I are expecting a kid in the summer, so I've decided to budget a little bit differently, right? So my break is the money that I would budget from that I would normally have. Now I'm saving that, right, for the most part. And so now the only cards that I buy are going to come from money from cards that I sell. So in a way, it's a bit of a break because I can't buy as much as I was able to before. And so what I've resorted to doing, in this break of I guess buying as much is I found that I'm trading a lot more. Which is really fun. I didn't do trades before as much. So while it's not a complete break, right? Like I'm not walking away from the hobby. I've found other ways to enjoy it. And I've also increased my bindering. So I've bought more pages. So I'm going to be bindering my cards more. So still buying, sheets, some supplies, but not spending as much on the cards. And it's actually been pretty enjoyable. I've been able to kind of do something different, and it still keeps me active without having to spend as much money.
Got some good comments coming in here. Mookie said, never take a break from Hobby Hotline. We obviously appreciate that. Anybody also, if you're watching, we should be trying to say this more. Make sure you like and subscribe on the videos. Like and subscribe on, I guess Twitter. On, I know we're on Bench Clear Media, but make sure to go to the Hobby Hotline channel. Make sure to come to all of our channels, like and subscribe. I mean, that's obviously, helps us out tremendously. So shout out to Mookie for never taking a break from Hobby Hotline. Then we had Mad City Brew hadn't bought a card in 3 months. We got Logan. Shout out to Logan, one of the Hobby Hotline members. He said, I've never taken a break from the hobby in 53 years. That's obviously, that's that is a long time, and that's good to hear. And then we've got Mookie again saying, my break was from 92 to 2019. No more breaks for me. So Adam, I'll ask you this question as well. Have you taken any breaks in the hobby recently or ever?
Yeah, so it's a funny, interesting question because there's different ways to look at it. I mean, I guess if you just look at it from buying cards, yes. I 1995 right about, I was 14. That's when I took a break from buying cards for about 8 years to 2003 after I graduated college. And then from 03 on to now, I've, here and there been buying. But I think being in the hobby can be different things too. You don't really have to just be buying. You can not be buying any cards, but you could participate in Hobby Hotline. You could have a podcast. You could do, there's different ways. You could go to card shows and not buy anything. So you don't have to buy to be in the hobby. And I think that's,
right.
I've heard Dr. Beckett say it many times that this is the greatest hobby in the world. And I think that's one of the reasons why, is because it can be a lifelong hobby, whether you're spending money or not. There's just different ways to enjoy the hobby. And I think that's a great part about it. But yeah, I really regret that period. I know why I did it. A lot of us did from that period, 95 to 2003. But I really wish I didn't, because a lot of the best cards came out during that period. And now I'm going back and having to spend a lot of money to buy them. And I wish I just bought them when I was younger, and it would have been a lot cheaper.
Right. Yeah. I mean, retrospect is obviously, hindsight's always 20/20 on these types of things. And I mean, for me, I guess my break story isn't necessarily like, because one thing for me, at least, that I focus a lot on is just media. Like I do a lot of like podcasting and videos and TikToks and Twitter and Instagram and all of those types of things. And I mean, there's definitely been lulls where I'm working on a bunch of different things, but then there's sometimes where it's like right now, for example, I'm just working on Hobby News, the podcast Hobby News Daily. There's been times where, I've been doing like Heroes for Sale. I did the Heroes for Sale podcast. I did Instagram, I did Twitter, I did TikTok. I mean, it's crazy. Sometimes you look back and you're like, I don't even know how I had all the time in the day to really do that type of stuff. It was really just like I'd get out of work, and then from like when I got out of work until when I was almost time to go to sleep, I was working on stuff. So in terms of buying stuff, I mean, I'll if something catches my eye, this is kind of the other thing with my buying habits in general, is like, I'm not necessarily buying like this year's Prism, for example. Like, I probably, the last card that I bought was, so there's this wrestler who I just think is hilarious. His name is Danhausen. He is in like, I think he's in AEW, which is like kind of like the not like the minor leagues, but it's like the alternate brand from the WWE. They're not together, but I think he's hilarious. I really thought he was very funny. And then I saw some of his cards, like, oh, I'll buy those. And, over the summer, I was buying some like Christian Pulisic, Chelsea cards, or some Christian Pulisic, like USA cards or stuff like that. It's really just random stuff. Like for me, I don't necessarily have like, it's almost like the opposite for me, where it's like, it's not necessarily taking a break from buying cards. It's like when I can find cards that I think are interesting to me, I'll buy them. But for me, it's definitely more of a media thing. And, there have been times where I've just been like, I haven't been in. We got Brody the Kid shouting out Danhausen. Very, very nice, very evil. That's his like little slogan. I just think, I mean, he's hilarious. Like I said, that's when he's really funny. But for me, it comes down to like just doing media within cards, and that's sort of what I focus a lot of my time on. Is doing that type of stuff, like buying and selling. I don't really focus as much on that. I mean, at the beginning, I definitely was very focused on buying and selling. But as I kind of sold a lot of the stuff that was expensive in a way, like unfortunately, like I sold it, back maybe a little bit too soon, but or maybe not soon enough. I don't know. Who really knows at what point like buying and selling cards works out for you. But the buying and selling of cards is not what I'm doing as much. It's definitely more of the media stuff. And so Horatio, I know you got to jump in like a couple seconds. I just want to make sure I give you one last chance. Give us your closing words for this episode. Me and Adam will finish things up after this, but Horatio, just want to give you one last chance to kind of give a shout out to anybody or do whatever you got to do here. As like I said, as you're got to jump in a little bit.
Are you going to segue into the Super Bowl, Adam?
Oh yeah, I can do that right now. If we want to.
Yeah. So I'll leave it like that as you segue. So I think, hopefully it's a great game. That's number one. I don't have a horse in this race. I like the 49ers. I think the Chiefs are tough in the Super Bowl. But I want to see Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, win that Super Bowl. I think that'd be a great story. I think Christian McCaffrey is one of, believe it or not, because he's in the West Coast, one of the underrated superstars of the league. Doesn't get his due just because I think now he plays on the West Coast now. I think it's gonna be a great game. Mahomes is an all-time great. He's a complete package when it comes to a quarterback. So it would be interesting to see Purdy, who was the last pick of the draft, win the Super Bowl. I just think the Niners are a complete team, and they win in a very close game. So
yeah,
shout out. I hope everyone stays safe and great comments. Again, I appreciate every time that I'm on here. Get to share my thoughts and that are worth nothing, and you guys are listening. So thank you very much for that.
Absolutely. Thanks. Thank you. We'll see you soon, Horatio.
Take care, guys.
See you, Horatio.
Take care, Adam.
You too. All right, cool. So we've got another probably like 10-15 minutes here. We'll go into this last topic. It is Sportico, one of the probably the bigger sports media, sports business type of publications on the internet right now. It's like Front Office Sports, Sportico. I think Action Network, they kind of do a little bit of sports stuff, like sports business in general. So they put out an article that it didn't really have too much meat to it, if I'm going to be completely honest. Like the one thing that I thought was interesting was Purdy's cards were the most submitted NFL player for authentication in 2024 since the start of the 2023 season. Well, I guess, that would only be a month, but that's regardless. But he, since the start of the 2023 season, he's only behind Trevor Lawrence as the most since the start of the 2023 season. He's the second most behind Trevor Lawrence. So Adam, what do you think of that? Like, that's kind of interesting. I think Trevor Lawrence being a guy who, it was a period of time where Zion and Ja coming in, where people were clamoring for Trevor Lawrence to be in the pros, and it feels like he fell off a little bit. Now, granted, he's still a really good quarterback. He had obviously that's that weird situation with Urban Meyer during his rookie year. And now he has Doug Peterson, who turned Carson Wentz into an MVP. So, what are your thoughts on, Purdy versus, the rest of the league, or maybe we'll get into this game, but maybe we'll talk about cards for a little bit. Like Purdy, what do you think about Purdy being only second behind Trevor Lawrence?
Yeah, I think that's what also from a hobby perspective makes this game tomorrow so interesting, because there's big implications. On one end, you have, like Horatio said, Patrick Mahomes, already an all-time great. If he goes ahead and wins that game tomorrow, now he's up. Now we're talking, people are comparing him to, Joe Montana and Peyton Manning, Tom Brady category, right? Some people already have him there, but I think if he wins tomorrow, and he's got 3 Super Bowl championships, and this one's the most impressive to me because he did a lot of it on the road. They're going to be underdogs I know they were in the last 2 games. I think they were underdogs in both of those. And now they're going to be, as of now, they're about 2-point underdogs. So that's going to be a very impressive run if they win that Super Bowl. And then on the other end of it, so that's going to be big for Mahomes, I think, in this hobby, elevating him to another level. And also then you look at Brock Purdy, who he's not the only guy who would benefit if the 49ers win. Like Horatio said, Christian McCaffrey, awesome player, man. Best running back in football.
Definitely.
MVP candidate this year. I think that would, if he has a huge game, let's say he wins the MVP, that I know running backs don't get the most love in the hobby, but that would be huge. I think for his collector base, and maybe create more collectors. Also, Brock Purdy, it's a great story. He's actually, I'm out here in Arizona, and he went to high school about 15 minutes away in Queen Creek, Arizona. So just a cool local story here. And being the last pick in the draft. I'm definitely going to be rooting for the 49ers for multiple reasons. One being, look, I love Tom Brady, and some of this Patrick Mahomes stuff I'm hearing now is starting to bother me a little bit. And I feel like, man, if he wins this one, then we're going to really have this conversation. It's going to become more of like a LeBron, Michael Jordan conversation, right?
Right.
With those two
Right.
guys.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I agree. I mean, obviously, so you're wearing a Patriots shirt, so I think that would probably mean you're a Patriots fan. Obviously, I've got, Boston. This is the Call of Duty team, but Boston, I'm a Boston fan as well. So I'm very, I don't know if you said you were conflicted. I'm very conflicted in this game of who I want to win. Because, on one hand, you got Mahomes, who, if he wins his third Super Bowl in his fourth appearance, which the only appearance that he lost was against Brady. Right. You have that on one side, but then on the other side, you have the 49ers, who are like they are very close to breaking the Patriots record for most Super Bowls. So it's like, it's very conflicting of who I really want to win here. I mean, I like last year's game was really good. It is unfortunate how it ended. Obviously with that holding call, you hope that they don't call it. It was a penalty, but it's like you kind of hope that they don't have to call that, but they did. And when it comes to the cards here, I think I still am a little bit skeptical about Purdy's cards in general, because I know like how many of them there are. Like we just talked about what happened with the prism and with the parallels. I know that I feel like football doesn't have as high of a print run. Like if you compare, like the way I usually compared was number of graded cards over the course. I don't really use that comparison anymore because of the way PSA shut down. But if you look at like 2017 to probably like 2019, if you look at the number of graded cards for basketball versus football, also football, probably people are submitting a little bit less. But if you look at those numbers, they're significantly different. They're significantly lower for football. So, you will probably see less Brock Purdy cards than you would, let's say like, so Brock Purdy, so that was 2022. So that would be, I don't know what basketball, I mean, it would have been, maybe like Jalen Green or some, I forget who the rookies were in 2022 for basketball. I don't know if the class was that great, but you're going to see probably less Brock Purdy cards graded than you will anybody that was, a rookie within basketball. Sorry, I reversed that. You'll see more Brock Purdy cards graded probably than anybody from basketball, but that's just because he's the guy that is like, he's in the Super Bowl. I mean, he has one of the best teams. And I do think also like, this run for the Chiefs, if they can win this game, they will have played basically the three other best teams in the league. Like that's what, like if we're saying the Bills, we're saying the Ravens, and then we're saying the 49ers, they can, if the Chiefs beat all three of those teams, they would have beaten other than if they win, they would have beaten the other three best teams in the league. Like I would say if you're talking four teams, you probably put the Chiefs in there as well. So there's four teams I think that were really contenders for the Super Bowl. And, if the Chiefs win, that's going to be super impressive. And so, yeah, I'll go down this article a little bit more. I mean, like I said, it was more just a lot of like facts. There wasn't really anything super crazy, I think, in here. One thing that I thought was kind of crazy was down here a little bit. They said, the rise in Purdy's card values might not be done either, as this is the biggest game of his career, or as the biggest game of his career awaits. And I'm wondering, Adam, from your perspective, like, this seems like, I don't know. I'm not sure we're at a point in sports cards right now where that is true, if I'm going to be completely honest, because, I think the way that sports cards, the market has changed, that this Super Bowl really, I don't think is going to affect. I mean, unless Purdy goes out and throws for 600 yards or something like that, I don't really see his value because, or Patrick Mahomes either. I mean, so I guess I'll ask you this question: who do you think's value would be impacted more, in this game, whether it's a win or a loss, like when it comes to the pricing of both of those quarterbacks?
Well, I think if Purdy has a bad game, which certainly could happen, I don't think Mahomes will have a bad game. I feel like he's going to, whether the Chiefs win or lose, I feel like Mahomes will have a good game. I might be wrong, but Purdy, man, I have mixed thoughts. It's a big spot for him. I hope they run the ball a lot. And I hope they don't put too much on his shoulders. But if he has a bad game, obviously that will hurt his values. Because to your point, we're in an era right now. We're at a time right now still where almost everyone, every player that has any hype to them already has great things priced into their best cards, right?
Correct.
So even if he has a great game and wins the Super Bowl, I don't know that makes a huge dent in his ceiling of his cards. I feel like that's already priced in probably with the people who are holding these cards. They bought them hoping that he would win the Super Bowl. So I don't think there's a huge way up for a lot of these cards. Now, I mentioned earlier, the mid 90s, early 2000s. The reason a lot of those cards are worth so much money, one of the reasons, is because that was a time period where the hobby was not like it is now. There was a lot of people like me who were tuned out, weren't buying cards at that period. A lot of these big cards, precious metal gems and stuff from the late 90s, when those came out, there was a very small amount of people who were, collecting cards compared to before that and now. So the hype wasn't there. There was hype. There always has been, but nowhere near where it is now. So, yeah, I think Mahomes, if he has a great game and the Chiefs win, I think that could certainly help his card values, because then, like I said, he's going into another category after that with that Super Bowl. So
yeah, I do agree with that, and I mean, I think, I don't know. I mean, I think you're right about a lot of players that are playing in the championship. So it's like, or the most popular players in general. So you look at like Luka, for example, like he has, his prices have dipped a little bit, but his prices really have shown like MVPs and championships where it's like he may or may not, he should probably win an MVP. He honestly has this era of, I think the era switch we're going into is going to be pretty wild within the NBA of like how good the players are. I mean, Luka, for example, he was phenomenal. He was phenomenal during his rookie year, but I think a lot of people have sort of caught up to how good he was, and like they are almost just as good as Luka is. Like you could probably still put Luka in the top 10 conversation, but as we see players like LeBron, or as we see players like, maybe Kevin Durant like retire in the next few years, like it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. And with Mahomes, he just signed like a 13-year contract for like almost $1 billion. Like he's not retiring anytime soon. So like if we see, I wonder if we're going to see if this is going to be very parallel to the Brady and Patriots, where it's like maybe they go on a 10-year run where they don't win anything. Like that would be, that's one thing that I will be very interested to see what happens to Mahomes' cards if that happens. But
well, think about this. Think about his when Brady won his first 3 Super Bowls. Belichick was a younger man at that point. You look at Andy Reid is such a big part. Not only Andy Reid, but his Spagnuolo, the defensive coach too. Especially Andy Reid, though. He is such a great coach, and he's so underrated still as a coach. I put him in Belichick territory with what he's done in his career. I mean, he took Donovan McNabb to 4 straight NFC championships. Think about that. Nothing against McNabb, but he is just a great coach, and he's older though. I don't think he's going to coach for another 10, 15 years like Belichick did with Brady after that first. So it's going to be like, that's the other thing too, is even if Mahomes wins and let's say he ends up with 5 or 6, 7 Super Bowls like Brady, a lot of it has to do with how it happened, the story behind it. If you think about, Brady's came back from 28-3. He was a 6th round pick. And, so within the hobby I'm talking about now, outside the hobby, you could have that discussion. But as far as like being iconic with their cards in the hobby, Mahomes may never, even if he wins 7 Super Bowls, he may never get to where Brady would get, because Brady has a lot of those stories. Now, if Mahomes comes back tomorrow down 20 points or does something incredible that people will tell their kids about 30 years from now, then that's going to change it. But it's not only if it happens, but it's how it happens in the hobby.
I think so too. I 100% agree. I just think of the way that Brady, and again, maybe, obviously we're Patriots fans, so we're going to be biased here, but I think if you look, if you look at the way that Brady, I think objectively, even if we weren't Patriots fans, you could look at the way that Brady won each of the championships, or even lost all the championships. Like they were 18-0 when they lost to the Giants, and then the next time they lost to the Giants, I was a freshman in college, and my roommate was a Giants fan, and I caught him a bunch of times just laying in bed with his like TV across the way and his feet just going like laughing, going, "Ha, that's awesome!" And I'm just sitting there like I can't believe it. But like I said, like Brady, he has tons of iconic games. Like the only non-iconic Super Bowl really he was in was like the Rams one, because it was just like they were basically going to win that game. I think they were pretty much favored, and it was kind of boring, and they kind of won at the end, which is like, that's how
people trash Mahomes. But to this point in his career, he's won a lot, right? But like when someone says like, what's a moment you remember from Mahomes? the first thing that comes to mind is in a losing effort against Brady in the Super Bowl when he threw like this. Like he for me, he doesn't have moments yet, and he probably will, but he doesn't have those moments. He has wins and he's MVPs, but I don't know. I don't remember any Mahomes moments yet in his career. So I think
these are all very Patriots and Brady fan things to say about a player that's won 3 championships and's been in 4, which is, I mean, it's just very funny for, obviously for us, for Patriots fans. We're obviously, I mean, I'll never say Mahomes is better than Brady. Absolutely not. No. I don't care how many Mahomes could win. It'll be the same thing. Mahomes could win 10 championships. No, Brady did it. He won championships better. His championships were more entertaining.
He beat him in a Super Bowl.
Right.
So
exactly.
Come on now.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I know everybody. We're sorry. We had to do a little bit of Patriots homeroing here. We're gonna wrap up the show here. Adam, I'll kick it to you first. Like, what are your final thoughts? Do you have any shout outs? Just let us know like what's going on in your world.
I just did an awesome episode on my channel with probably one of the most famous YouTube commenters, Mike Petty. He never used to come on, but he came on my channel here in the last week. So go check that out. We did a fun little episode together. He's a great guy. And I'm just excited about the game tomorrow. I think it's going to be a great game. I think both teams are really good, and I'm looking forward to having some fun watching it.
Yeah, I'm excited for the food too. I'm going to be making some like buffalo chicken grilled cheese. I mean, I'm going to be making some good stuff. Yeah. It's very exciting. And I'll wrap up the show here. I always try and say whenever I host these shows, make sure that people are going to be coming into this hobby. People come and go, but the people that are coming in, they're interested in the thing that you are interested in. So just when they have questions, be kind to them. They are in the same spot that you were at in one point. And I think now we have so much information, it's much easier to kind of learn that stuff, which I definitely think is a good thing. But, as always, if people are asking questions, just be nice to them. That's basically all we've got for today's episode. We've got an episode coming up next Saturday back here on Bench Clear Media. Make sure you check back. I don't think we're doing Tuesday episodes anymore, so there's going to be no Tuesday episodes. But Saturdays will always be here on Bench Clear Media. And then if you Hobby Hotline, I think on Facebook and Twitter. So go check us out there. But like I said, thank you, everybody. Thank you to all the people in the chat. Thank you to all the people leaving comments. Thank you all, and we will see you in the next one.
See you guys.